Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I'm your host, Ril Gerald Quinn, episode 923, NFL Week 6. As we discussed the end of the week of NFL action, it was one of those weeks. Like, if you were a gambler, certainly was not a good week for you. If you were a fan of a team that had a good record, a great record in the case of 49ers and Eagles, it wasn't your week as well. We're going to begin, though, with, as always, themes, any given Sunday. And that definitely played out this week as we had two big upsets and a near big upset on Sunday night. So it was one of those Sundays where things were kind of a little upside down, and a lot of defense in this week. During this week, there were a number of games played in the teens, not outside of the Dolphins. Nobody scored. Nobody scored basically outside of the Dolphins for the most part. So, I think we gotta realize with the NFL, and because it's only 17 games, and it's easy for me to say I don't play in the NFL. I don't have to deal with that physical torture that these guys go through week in and week out. But in other sports, we look at some periods where, especially basketball and baseball, especially with the NBA, where a team will lose, even a good championship team will lose 3 out of 5, 3 out of 4 6 goal stretch where they're 500, and you look on the counter and it's like January and February. You say to yourself, "Oh, that makes perfect sense." It's kind of like that period of we're not quite ready for playoffs yet, and it's a period in the season where boredom can set in, especially if you're a team that's championship caliber and you're thinking about the playoffs, and you're thinking those sports are the NBA more so than any other sport, just about as a postseason driven sport. So it's understandable from that standpoint of a team struggling in the middle of the season and with so many games, 82 games in the NBA. Football, we don't think about that, but there is a dead period in football. I would say mid to late October can be that period, that mid to late October, because the honeymoon is over. September is the month, and I said this. September is like the preseason, and teams get off to quick starts at times, or the weather hasn't shifted yet, and guys are still trying to figure out. Teams are still trying to figure out their identities. By October, you should know who you are, and even with that being said, there is a period of fatigue that sets in mid to late October, where you start seeing some just crazy results or some shit that just doesn't make sense. This is one of these weeks. I'm not gonna say this is not the wildest week we've ever seen in professional in recent NFL history. Like, we've seen crazier, we've seen more upsets, but I think we could be headed for the next couple Sundays, at least till we get to November, or maybe until we get to Thanksgiving, possibly, for a stretch of weeks where it could be some unpredictable results. Remember, the gap between the good and great teams is not that good. It's not that big. There's no dominant team in the league right now. Now, I'm not going to say that the football. I heard a lot of this after this weekend that is wide open. It's not wide open. Let's not. There's not going to be a surprise Super Bowl winner this year. Team that wins the Super Bowl will be a team that you could have said at the beginning of the season could be a Super Bowl winner. You won't be shocked. So there's not that. When you say wide open, let's calm down with that. There are about 5 or 6 teams possibly that could win the Super Bowl. Maybe maybe even less than that. But let's say 5 to 6 offhand, just for the sake of argument. So I chalk it up to some fatigue, mid-season fatigue. I'm not even say boredom, because you can't get bored in an only 17-game season, but some fatigue, some injuries, and things of that nature. And just just no dominant team. There's no team that has separated themselves from the rest of the pack. That's all there is to it. Or teams that separate themselves to that extent. All the thoughts. The Bills survive a scare. So the Bills take out the Giants 14-9. This is was by far the best performance the Giants have had all season. By far, it's not even close. The Giant defense came to play. They were able to run the ball. Tyrod Taylor, I thought, did everything but manage the clock. But manage the clock at the end of the first half, which cost the Giants dearly because they would have been in position for a game-winning field goal during that last drive. But I can't ask for anything more out of Tyrod Taylor. He's Tyrod Taylor. Like, you're talking about a veteran backup quarterback, a solid veteran backup quarterback. But he had no turnovers, and he made some plays. And again, I don't have the highest expectations for Tyrod Taylor. But I guess the thing that to take out this game would be the Bill offense. The Giant defense is not good. Like, the Giant defense is at the bottom half of the league. They're ranked 28th and 27th in yards and points. And that was after this game when they only gave up 14 points. Like, they were even worse, obviously, coming into this game. So that defense is not what it was last year. Their season is in essence over at 1-5. Like, they're not going anywhere. They're playing with their backup quarterback. So, I think if you're Buffalo, again, I'm never worried concerned about Buffalo's defense. Buffalo's defense is going to do what it does. Now, I'm sure Buffalo was not happy that the Giants were able to run the ball with a backup quarterback, knowing that that's exactly what they were going to try to do. So I don't think, if you want to nitpick from that standpoint defensively, you can certainly look at that as a slight concern. But offensively, I just don't understand what. I still don't think that they figure out what exactly is the plan offensively. We were talking about this in week one when they lost that horrible game to the Jets, which doesn't look as bad now considering how well the Jets have played despite not having Aaron Rodgers. But from a Bills standpoint, I don't quite get what they're trying to do offensively, and I think that they don't really know what they are trying to do or what they want to do offensively. There's still that lack of identity in terms of who they are offensively. And that shouldn't be the case when you have a top quarterback like Josh Allen, when you have weapons like, when you have a Stephon Diggs, like that just should be, and good tight ends. And a good tight end. So I'm considering what happened this week, I wouldn't go too crazy about what transpired. San Francisco and Philadelphia lost. So Buffalo, you get the win and you take it and you move on. But there are still some quite major question marks about that team, about that offense's identity moving forward. And again, if you're Buffalo, you're not thinking about the regular season. You're thinking you are preparing for January. It's Super Bowl or bust. It's just that simple. Anything less than a Super Bowl appearance is a major disappointment. That's where Buffalo is at right now. They've been in the conference championship. They've been in the playoffs every year. They've won division. They've owned that division. So it's not like getting in the playoffs and winning a game and getting bounced. That's a horrible season. Even going to the AFC championship would be unacceptable without a Super Bowl appearance. So that's where they're at right now. But again, that offense should not look that bad at home against a Giant team that, they are who they are as far as their record. They're a 1-5 football team. They are just a bad that's been beat up, and again was playing without their starting quarterback. But I give the Giants credit. They fought. They probably outplayed Buffalo for the most part. Held Buffalo under 300 yards. So I give the Giants credit, but it was not enough. Buffalo gets the victory. Marquee games. Jets Eagles was interesting. Give the Jets a lot of credit. They had Jalen Hurts in a vice grip. They made him look. It was literally one of the worst games of his career. 3 interceptions. Mind you, they're playing again with Zach Wilson, who hasn't been terrible at quarterback, but he's still Zach Wilson. They were missing their 2 starting cornerbacks, including the guy who I think is the best in the game right now, Sauce Gardner, who's an All-Pro. And I think if you're Eagles, look at the play calling: 22 runs, 45 passes. Like that's just inexcusable. Uh, the Jets, even without their cornerbacks, the Eagles' bread and butter is running the football. Like, yes, Jalen Hurts can put up some big numbers, and if you have to go in that direction, he's capable with those receivers. He's more than capable of going out there and throwing the ball all over the field, making plays through the air, especially down the field. But your bread and butter is running the football using your physicality. You have one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in all football. And I didn't get the play caller at all. But this was more to me about the Jets. I will get more speaking more about the Jets later on, but just a great victory for the Jets. They improved now to 3-3. You take out Mahomes, Hurts. They've taken on some quarterbacks like Mahomes, Hurts, Josh Allen, and to be 3-3, Dak Prescott. To be 3-3 with the going through the gauntlet of quarterbacks and the schedule, it's pretty phenomenal. Again, we'll talk more about them later in the podcast. Some other games you had. We'll get there. Yeah, some other marquee game that you had to talk of. Cincinnati taking out Seattle 17-14. This was a game Cincinnati completely won with their defense. Obviously, Burrow's not healthy. We know this. Seattle had been great on the road, by the way. Prior to this game, I think they had won like 16 of 20 games on the road on the Eastern time zone. This was a just knockdown, drag out type game. It really was indicative of how the day went in the NFL. Cincinnati, they're doing it again. Like they start out, 0-3. They've won now 3 straight. They're 3-3. They are right in the thick of that division. Again, the Burrow injury is concerning though. He does not look like the same quarterback. He just doesn't. You could tell that he's not right now. Those calf injuries can be tricky in football, especially as a quarterback. I don't see that. Like, I don't see him being ever 100% over the course for the rest of the season, because that's an injury that just doesn't heal fast. And they're going to have to nurse their way. They're going to have to defend. They're going to rely heavily on their defense and their running game. Burrow is not going to be able to carry them, especially in that division. But give them a lot of credit. They are 3-3. Very winnable game for Seattle, but just too many mistakes. But I say, give Cincinnati's defense all the credit in the world as they just do what they do. Listen, but they are a mentally tough franchise right now, and I never thought I would say that about the Cincinnati Bengals. But you have a quarterback, you have coaches that who are excellent in terms of game planning, especially defensively, and they built this culture of winning and believing that, hey, our season's never over. We've been down before. We had struggled early and bounced back. That goes a long way in a long season, in a 17-game season. So I give them a lot of credit for gutting that victory out. Like I said, they are every team in that division has won 3 games. So with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and themselves, and also Cleveland. So that division is going to be fun to watch over the course of the season. And speaking of Cleveland, in the game of the week, Cleveland just mauled San Francisco defensively, 19-17, and still almost could have easily lost the game if the guy doesn't miss a field goal, a 41-yard field goal. But this was a defensive clinic for Cleveland. They absolutely just did whatever they wanted to against Brock Purdy. Purdy had been playing as well as a quarterback and played up to this point, but they had him running for his life in essence for the majority of the game. They were like, the Jet defense was on Jalen Hurts. It was very similar with Cleveland's defense. being on by Purdy. And listen, Cleveland after that embarrassing show against Baltimore, as far at home, the defense stood up. The defense stood up against an offense that had been putting up 30-point games left and right against a quarterback that had never lost a regular season game. So they snapped his. I think he had started out his career at 10-0 or 11-0, and they had a 15-game. San Francisco prior to this game had a 15-game regular season winning streak that was snapped. So, listen, Cleveland has a bunch of talent on defense. They got, like I said, I never like thought that they couldn't play defense, but I was not going to put them up there as this all-time great single season defense that people were ready to anoint them. But they are legit top tier defensive football team. Don't get that mistaken. They can play defense with anybody. Myles Garrett, we know what Myles Garrett brings, and they actually upgrade the talent over the course of the offseason. So they are capable of having performances like this against a team that many thought coming into the game was the best team in football, including myself included, and thought that it was the Super Bowl favorites. And again, I don't go. Listen, my thing with San Francisco, I don't care about this loss. They wasn't going to go undefeated. Nobody was going to go undefeated. We understand that. Don't care about the loss, but it's just. But McCaffrey, Deebo Samuels, and Trent Williams. Those are their three best players. Like, if I'm ranking their three best players, Trent Williams, McCaffrey, and Deebo Samuels. Not only are three their best, but three are the four most important players on that team. Those are three guys that all have to be healthy. They can't afford to have any of those guys not healthy for them to go to the Super Bowl. Let them forget about winning, to go to the Super Bowl. They can't, none of those guys could be hurt. None of them. So they are going to navigate, especially McCaffrey. I don't think, listen, Trent Williams, he's going to play every down with the team's on offense. There's no really resting offensive tackle, especially a tackle that protects your future franchise quarterback. But and Deebo is going to play. Deebo is going to be Deebo as far as, he's tough as nails, one of the most physical receivers in the league. But the McCaffrey thing would kind of make me nervous if I was a San Francisco fan, because as a guy who has a injury history, he's missed as many games as he's played. So you have to handle him with kid gloves. It's all there is to it. And he, like I said, he's been on the field. He has been dynamic. He's played up on an MVP caliber level this year. So they're going to find a way to really lighten his load. You remember, you are preserving him for January. It's not about October. It's not about November. I would be even willing to sacrifice home field advantage if I could, for him to be healthy. You can win anywhere. Your defense travels, your offensive line. You can win. You won playoff road games at Green Bay, okay, at Dallas. So it's not even about that. About the home field. Sure, you like home field. Sure, you like the extra week of rest. Of course, who would? But if you have to sacrifice that to keep McCaffrey healthy, it's way more important to keep McCaffrey upright. Who won the week? The New York Jets. New York Jets clearly won the week to be. Again, when Aaron Rodgers goes down in the fourth play of the season for the Jets, offensive play for the Jets, at that point it's like it's a wrap. And I still think it's a wrap from the standpoint of they're not a championship contender. But when you lose your starting quarterback, your future Hall of Fame quarterback, we've seen many of locker rooms go to shit, and many of teams fall apart, especially teams that don't have a history of winning. We're talking about a franchise that has had a perennial losers, has one Super Bowl, but that's one more than a lot of teams. But that was in 1969. Had some decent, pretty good. They've been in the playoffs here and there. Pete Carroll 1 year, Bill Parcells. So Rex Ryan a couple of years, but for the most part, the Jets have been one of the laughing stocks of the National Football League. So I give Robert Saleh all the credit in the world, and I would consider him. I think he might be on the short list of Coach of the Year candidates, considering the job that he's done, and especially this game. You're talking about most, without your starting quarterback, without your two starting cornerbacks against a Philly team that we know is loaded. We know how talented they are. So the Jets, from that standpoint, have somewhat turned the corner as far as character. They had a great character win in week 1 against Buffalo. Okay. So they're going to be around. Like, they're going to be in the playoff mix. They're not a threat in the playoffs. We understand that you can't hide your quarterback only so much. Definitely not in the playoffs, and only so much in the regular season. But the team is fighting. They believe in the coach, and they are going to be in most games with that defense. The defense is that good. It's not it's not an all-time great, but it is a legit top 5 NFL defense, no question. The deep dive, the Lions. I never thought I would ever, in all of my years of doing this podcast and talking about the NFL, thought that I would deep dive the Detroit Lions, but they deserve it. The Lions right now are one of the best teams in the NFL. They are 5-1. They have won 12 out of their last 15 games. And that's not a short sample, okay? That's almost a year's worth of football that we've got to see out of the Detroit Lions going back to last season. They rank top 10 in both offense and defense in points allowed and also yardage. So they are very much balanced, a balanced football team. Jared Goff, you can say all you want about him. He has played in the Super Bowl before as a starting NFL quarterback. And he went through some shit, got traded, had a team told him you weren't good enough, and they won the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. But he's played extremely well, and again, listen. They're going to make the playoffs. We understand. We know this. Injuries withstanding, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to absolutely run away with that division. They are so by far the best team in that division. It's not funny. And I was looking at their schedule. They have a legit chance to win 12 to 13 games. That is on the table. They will be in the conversation for best record in the conference in the AFC. They will absolutely be in that mix because the schedule is just not. Their schedule is just not hard with that division. The toughest team they play for the rest of the remainder of the season will have 11 games left. The toughest team they play for the remainder of the season the toughest game on paper is at Baltimore, which is this week. That is literally their toughest game remaining. That division is dreadful. I mean, you're talking about still multiple games against Minnesota and Chicago. So, listen, the Lions have been perennial losers. Like the Jets have, the Lions have been even worse. Like at least the Jets have a Super Bowl. The Lions have never been to a Super Bowl. Nobody cares about those NFL championships from the 50s and 30s. And they, it's hard to overlook a culture of losing. But that right now, what I'm seeing is a team that could be a surprise. If they made the NFC Championship, would I be shocked? No. They could be a surprise visitor in the NFC Championship. Now, would they beat either Philadelphia or San Francisco? No, of course not. But it's not far-fetched to say that the Detroit Lions will not only will make the playoffs, but could also win a playoff game, if not 2 playoff games, depending on where they're seated. Excellent offensive line. Like I said, they have an excellent offensive line. They run the football. They have a coach that doesn't play conservatively, takes chances. I still gotta see more. Like I still have to see more from a standpoint of I gotta see it in the playoffs with their franchise because they have such a history of losing, and this particular iteration of their team has no real playoff experience as a team. So we'll see how it plays out. But they definitely deserve to be mentioned amongst once you get past San Francisco and Philadelphia, they are, I mean, they're the third best team in the conference. I'll be behind those two teams. They have separated themselves from everyone else outside of San Francisco and Philadelphia. Stock up, stock down, stock up. CJ Stroud, very few rookie quarterbacks come in and have any success in the NFL. It is extremely rare. Even Peyton Manning stunk in his rookie season. Go back and look at it. So when a guy comes out, is 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, and has led his team, most importantly, led his team to a 500 record, it deserves notice. And listen, short sample, 6 games. It was not a short sample for it because the season, that's almost basically a third of the season, but there are intangibles that you see that go beyond stats. And when you hear some of the things that are being said about him, like he already is emerged as one of the leaders in the locker room, team already believes in him. That tells you all you need to know. Because the NFL, professional sports is not kind to rookies who are not superstars coming off the bat. Like they're like Victor Wembanyama is such a generational talent that you have no choice but to kind of not so much bow down to him. But the other players around the league know how talented that dude is. They know. Like they're not, it stands out. But when you're coming to the National Football League and playing one of the most important, toughest positions in all the sports, one of the premier positions in all the sports, and you can come out on a franchise that has done nothing but do ass backwards stuff over the last 5 or 6 years, it says a lot. Like he single-handedly is changing or shifting the culture of that football team. And there's not a lot of talent on that football team. They are devoid of a lot of talent. Trust me, their receivers are not. Robert Woods is almost at the end of his rope as far as his career. He's not what he once was, and some of the other guys they have, like, it's not a who's who in terms of the names. It's just on that roster, just to tell you. So he's not walking to a San Francisco 49ers situation like Brock Purdy did, or even Jalen Hurts with the Eagles, with how much talent that they had. So you have to give him a lot of credit. We'll see how long it lasts. They will be right in the thick of that division because no one is running away with the AFC South, as we all know. Well, stock down. The Chargers stay the Chargers. There wasn't even I can't even call this a choke job per se. We've seen a number of over the last 10 to 15 years, the Chargers find new and creative ways to lose. It's just watching them play football. Dallas had more penalties. I think Dallas had 11 for 89. Chargers had 9 for 87, something like that. But it was when their penalties came. Big pass plays got called back. You have your all-pro or Pro Bowl left tackle Slater who all of a sudden can't block anybody. Just a comedy of errors. And like I said, I've said this since the beginning of the season, maybe even last offseason. The clock is ticking on Brandon Staley. It really is. Because this is the last year where Justin Herbert is not going to be making just ridiculous money, and you're going to have to start losing some talent based off the fact that he's going to be taking out a lot of your salary cap, which he should as the franchise quarterback. And, Justin Herbert, for all the talent that he has, is he where he should be right now? All things considered, considering some of the weapons they have, considering how good their offensive line is. Brandon Staley would have been gone after last year if it was my team. After what happened in the playoffs, what happened in that game last year against Jacksonville, that would have been enough to be nah, it's a wrap. But he gets another chance, and like I said, if that team doesn't not only make the playoffs, but doesn't at least make it to win a game and make it to the divisional, you can't justify Brandon Staley keeping his job. But the Chargers stay the Chargers. They find ways to lose. That game was right on the platter for them to win, but they could not get it done, and they never do. We're going to end up. Oh, we did have some. So. All right, before we get some real thoughts, looking ahead to week 7, right? Um, there's some big matchups in week 7. Two, I think, excellent games. One great game. Miami, Philadelphia should be very interesting. Those offenses, both those offenses are very good. The Miami offense is just dynamic. Philadelphia, we'll see how Miami can match up with it. We'll get another test of another team that is a physical smash mouth team that likes to punch you in the mouth. We'll see how they didn't respond well against Buffalo. We'll see how they respond on the road against Philadelphia. And Detroit, Baltimore. Detroit goes to Baltimore. So we're going to see Detroit against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. And this is, like I said, this will be on paper their toughest their toughest game. So those are two very good games to stay to be looking forward to in a week 7. Again, we have not gotten to that stage where we're going to see 4 or 5 excellent games. It's still, so gotta be patient. They're coming. They're coming. It's coming. Once November hits, then you will start to see some of those big time games. So we're still, the pickings are still kind of slim as far as great games goes over the course of the week, especially with the primetime games. But we'll be out. We'll be in the clear soon in a couple of weeks. But again, the Miami, hopefully, it lives up to the billing because a couple of these Sunday night games have been built up as to be great games. But Miami, Philadelphia should be fascinating to say the least. So I haven't discussed what is going on, of course, in Israel and the Gaza Strip and what's going on in the Middle East. Since it started, I only think I did a podcast last week. It was well discussed. It was going on. So I really wanted to be careful and thoughtful about what I said in regards to the situation. I'm going to read a quote. Well, not a quote. I'm going to read a statement from an anonymous person that I got permission from to read this. I know this individual. And here's the quote. And again, to anybody Jewish, I'm going to apologize in advance for there are going to be some words that I just flat out butcher. I thought a lot this past weekend, about what it means to be Jewish. I thought about how Oy Vey Mesuganef and Mitzvah were common terms in my home. Again, I apologize for butchering some of those terms. I thought about the gifts I got for Chanukah, Chanukah as a child. Chanukah as a child. The candles I lit, the dreadsdales I spun. I thought about the books I read about the Holocaust, the fear I felt as a Jew. I thought about the Exodus, the story of Jews escaping slavery in Egypt. I thought about the story of my grandfather writing his cousin during the Holocaust, a Jew in Poland, and how the letters stopped one day, how my grandfather never heard from his cousin again. I thought about my visit to Yad Vashem, a museum in Jerusalem that depicts the horrors of the Holocaust. I thought about the last exhibit in that museum. I walked through a trail in complete darkness, and I saw names of children who were killed in the Holocaust light up on the walls around me. I walked out of that exhibit sobbing. The pain, the anger, and sadness I felt in that moment was overwhelming. I felt proud to be a part of a people who had overcome. But more than anything, through all of these thoughts, I thought about how Palestinians live in the world's largest open-air prison, how Israel controls their electricity, their water, and their food. I thought about how by the end of today, Israel will have killed over 3,000 Gazans, at least 1,000 being children. Gazans, excuse me. I thought about how the world cried for Israel, but was silent for decades as Palestinians were murdered and continue to be silent as the death toll in Gaza grows. As Jews, we have a duty to make sure that no one is ever murdered or killed because of what they believe, what they look like, or where they are born, to make sure that what happened to us happens to no one else. Many people in Gaza die simply for being born there. Right now, Palestinian homes and hospitals are being bombed with families in them. Children are dying. And as Jews, we have a duty to advocate against that now and forget forever. And if you claim to be an ally to Jewish people, you have that duty too. That perspective is, to me, I couldn't you couldn't have said it better to me. And the problem with versus that perspective versus what you've seen on mainstream media or versus what you've heard in general on this internet with a bunch of people just have no clue what the hell they're talking about. I mean, zero clue, haven't read anything, have no, there's no substance. It's all, a lot of social media bullshit. That perspective, there was humility, there was empathy, there clearly was experience. Like the person that has been to Jerusalem has been exposed to a number of things, clearly well read, clearly just, again, a lot of thought. This was a long, this was, see, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. This is long. This was a lot of words. So clearly, you can just read it and tell how much thought went into it. What I've seen throughout the course of this situation is our society, America leading the way, being so quick to pick a side. We stand with Israel. Cool. You can stand with Israel, but what about the innocent Palestinians that are killed? Women, children, innocent people who just have they're not fighting in the war, who are not fighting in the war, or who have no part of this. So I stand myself with humanity. That's what I stand. Right. And this thing, I'm telling you right now, this thing is so complicated. Like there are literally books upon books and that could be written and still can tell the entire story, explain every facet of what's going on. Even if I'm telling you, and I've listened to a number of podcasts, I've read things, even people who we call experts who are in or who are over there and can explain it, can have it and have a pulse on what's going on, still will tell you how complicated it is. Even academics will tell. I don't care how smart, how intelligent these people are. These are some intelligent people. These are people who are just who are covering this. This is a part of their life. You have some news people. You have some people who are just have been lifers at describing what's going on, and they will tell you how they will be like, don't simplify this as Israel versus Palestine. If you think that, then you're just a fool, and you're clearly not well read, and you're clearly not willing to take the time to even get a sense of what the hell is going on, or practicing humanity, by the way. So I would encourage anybody, if you really want to know what's going on, do the research, get both perspectives, get all the perspectives, and listen. Just do less talking with this situation and more reading and listening and watching. That's what I would advise anybody. This thing is way more complicated. than what we're making it out to, than what we even realize, than we even think we realize. It is. It just is. You know, pray for everybody. Pray for all of everybody involved. Bottom line. Don't get caught up in this. This is not a sporting event. It's not, it's not taking a side. I mean, that should not be the perspective. That should not be the viewpoint that you're coming, the prism that you're coming from, the prism in which you view this from. Shouldn't be. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I will see you next time. You will stay tuned for the next edition. In terms of the snowfall, we are up to season 2, episode 9. That will be the next episode that comes out. That will be out next week. So stay tuned for that. Have a great rest of your evening. So long.